Al Baker, who in 1978, just 4 years before they quote unquote started the official sack list, has 23 sacks, which is a half sack more than Michael Strahan and TJ Watt. So Myles Garrett now, unofficially, is 1 sack behind Al Baker. Welcome to Just the Stats NFL Top 10's for Monday. What a series of football games we had yesterday. The big one, of course, for me as a Jaguar fan was them beating the Denver Broncos, and fairly handily. Yeah, really enjoyed that game. It was intense. It started off a little tight, but the Jaguars came out on top. But we'll talk about that game probably actually tomorrow. Today we're going to start off with some games, but we won't get to that particular game. We'll cover the couple of games from Saturday and then some from Sunday, and we'll go from there. But big week this week for football. We got football on Monday, then on Christmas, and so a lot of football, and we're getting down there. A lot of the playoff scenarios are getting clearer. We'll look at that later on in the week. I'll try to have a podcast every day, even though this is Christmas week. So I'll try to still have something out there for you to listen to if you have the time. All right, so with that, let's get started. And we'll start with the Philadelphia Eagles beating the Washington Commanders. Now, this game was closer than you might have expected it should have been. And in fact, at halftime, the Commanders were winning at 10-7. But Philadelphia in the fourth quarter put up 15 points, and Washington was just no match for them overall. But the Eagles still, to me, don't look completely impressive. Their offense still looks sporadic. So, for example, Jalen Hurts was 22 completions on 30 attempts, 185 yards, 2 touchdowns. Really not a lot of yardage there. Now, Saquon Barkley did have a big game, 21 carries, 132 yards. One was a 48-yard run, and he did have a touchdown. So big game for him. Jalen Hurts had another 7 carries for 40 yards. And then Tank Bigsby came in late in the game when it was wrapped up for the Eagles pretty much. And he had 4 carries for 37 yards, had a touchdown run as well. Nice run for him, 22 yards. Happy for him. He was with the Jaguars. They shipped him off to the Eagles, and looks like both the Eagles and the Jaguars will be in the playoffs, and who knows? Maybe they play in the Super Bowl. That'd be something. I doubt it, but at least on the Eagles side. Anyway, that's a little humor there on Monday morning. Now, for the Philadelphia Eagles in receiving, A.J. Brown, 9 catches, 95 yards. He was the main receiver there, though Devontae Smith had 6 catches for 42 yards and a touchdown. And then Dallas Goedert had another touchdown, 3 catches for 32 yards, but one of those, like I said, was a touchdown. They look for him in the end zone when they're close, and he's been producing pretty well. And his catch, he was too open. I don't know. They're looking in his direction. Just he was too open. Now for the Commander, as well as Marcus Mariota for most of the game. And then Josh Johnson came in when Mariota got hurt. But either way, it was poor performance as a whole. 12 completions on 23 attempts for 130 yards. That's pretty bad. Just no good at all. 1 interception by Josh Johnson. They've completely fallen apart. They showed a stat on the game there with the injuries, serious injuries this team has had. And it's been bad for them. For them, they just need the season to be over and get healthy and look to next year and try to see what they can muster then, get some new talent on their team. In the running department, not much better. Chris Rodriguez, 15 carries for 63 yards. So that's over 4 yards a carry and a touchdown. The problem is after, the third quarter, they were playing from behind, and so they needed to try to throw the ball, but they didn't even have the ball long enough to really do much. Corey Krosky Merritt had 8 carries for 25 yards and a touchdown. So between passing and running, they have managed 220 yards of offense. So not really anything spectacular. Terry McLaurin led the team in receptions and yards. And when I say that, only 3 receptions for 53 yards. Deebo Samuels had 3 catches as well for 35. That's it. That's it for that team. Just nothing, really to amount to anything. So now the Eagles are 10-5, and they've got their division wrapped up with the Cowboys losing their game. All right, now looking at some of the top 10s for the Eagles, Jalen Hurts was sacked twice in this game for 7 yards. He only needed 1 sack to tie Norm Snead for 4th. And he got 2, so he's been now sacked 182 times to be in 4th position all time for the Philadelphia Eagles in quarterback sacks. And I don't know if he'll ever go beyond 4th because Ron Jaworski had 344 in his career. So basically almost double what Jalen Hurts had. So that's a long, long way away. But anyway, he is now 4th all time in sacks for the Philadelphia Eagles. Now, also in this game, Dallas Goedert, like I said, had a good game. Now, as far as receiving goes, he's still their leading receiver among current players. He had 3 receptions in this game, and now that pushes him up. He stayed in 5th, actually. He had 3 receptions. He's got 406. Devontae Smith now, on the other hand, did move up from 9th to 8th. Devontae Smith had 6 catches. He now has 380. He moves into 8th place ahead of Pete Pijos, who played in the 40s and 50s. So now he has 380. Dallas Goedert has 406. He's been gaining ground, but he won't. Very doubtful he catches him this year. In fact, almost no chance. I mean, 2 games, and he's still 26 down. But probably next year he will pass Goddard. And then you still have A.J. Brown coming up the list as well. He'll probably make this top 10 next year. So if they're all playing, you could see 3 Eagle players in the top 10 all time in receptions for that team. All right, now looking at Dallas Goedert one more time. As I was saying, with that touchdown reception that he had on Saturday, he now has 34, which ties him with Calvin Williams, who played in the 90s. They both have 34. They're now tied for 10th spot. So Goddard has moved into the top 10 all time in receiving touchdowns for the Eagles. Next up for him is Deshaun Jackson, who had 35. So he has a good chance to catch him. 1 touchdown catch in 2 games. It's very possible the way they've been using him around the end zone. Moving on to the next game, there were no top 10s for the Commanders, so we'll move on to a new game here, and that is the Green Bay Packers and the Chicago Bears. What a game that was. Green Bay, holy cow, they had this game. All they had to do, among other things, all they had to do was catch the onside kick and down it. That's all they had to do, and they couldn't do it. How terrible. I mean, what a way to lose a game. Man, Chicago Bears win this game 22-16. They should have had no business winning this game. And this is the team, I've been saying it over and over. They're 11-4. And every time I turn around, I'm like, how in the world did they win another game? But they do. But Green Bay just had to catch it on the onside kick, couldn't do it. And that was game. Chicago Bears tied it up, actually. And then they won it in overtime when Green Bay screwed up there too. But Chicago Bears scored 13 points in the 4th quarter. And I'm talking late in the 4th quarter too. At the end of the game, obviously, they had to get that last score to even tie the game. Well, it was a little surprising to the announcers. They were sure that the Bears would go for it, a 2-point conversion when they tied the game, where they could have tied it up on an extra point, which is what they did, but they decided not to go for the 2-point conversion. And, it turned out for them. They didn't do that. They came in overtime and won the game. But, man, Green Bay, golden opportunity to move in first place, and they blew it, really. Now, we'll have to see how Jordan Love is. He was out of the game, but Malik Willis played well. And in fact, looking at the numbers, I mean, Malik Willis, well, first, Jordan Love had 8 completions on 13 attempts for 77 yards. Malik Willis, 9 completions on 11 attempts for 121 yards and 1 touchdown. Plus, he ran the ball 10 times for 44 yards. He really did play well for somebody coming in like he did, but just they could not pull this game out. As far as Green Bay and rushing department, Josh Jacobs tried to play. He just hasn't been that healthy. He had 12 carries for 36 yards, but you didn't even see him in the end of the game. But he did give it a go. Emmanuel Wilson, 14 carries for 82 yards, so that's really good. And then, like I said, Malik Willis had 10 carries for 44 yards. So they ran the ball 44 times for 192 yards. And again, you really do expect to win when you rush that well in a game, but they did not. Now, in the receiving department, it was Dobbs who dropped that onside kick. He led the team in receiving with 5 catches for 84 yards and 1 touchdown. I bet he'd give up one of those catches for catching that onside kick. He led the team with 5 catches. No one else had more than 3. I mean, there were only 17 completions in the game. Now for Chicago, Caleb Williams had a decent game, 19 completions on 34 attempts for 250 yards and 2 touchdowns. So really a good game for him. And then in the running department, they really did run fairly well. Kind of spread it around, though. 13 carries for 58 yards for DeAndre Swift. So, a little over 4 yards there. But then Kyle Mononagay, 9 carries for 50 yards. So that's over 5 yards a carry. And then Caleb Williams, 3 carries for 30 yards as well. So they had 26 carries for 150 yards. Obviously very good in that department for them. Almost, 6 yards a carry. And then in the receiving department was DJ Moore. And man, he had a beautiful catch in this game, but he had 5 catches for 97 yards and 1 touchdown. Nobody else had more than 3 catches, and one of those was the Kyle Mononagay with 3 catches out of the backfield for 43 yards. So he had 43 yards receiving and another 50, so he had 94 yards of offense for him. Swift had 2 catches for 12 yards plus 58, so he had total 70 yards. So they racked up a lot of the yardage for this team. Now, Chicago Bears have a decided advantage here. Now they're 11-4, and the Green Bay Packers are now 9-5. So Chicago Bears, it's in their hands, this division. Green Bay now is going to have to worry more about making the playoffs at all than even anymore really winning the division. Now in this game for the Green Bay Packers, Jordan Love, despite the fact that he was knocked out of this game early, he had 77 yards. That's exactly what he needed. He needed 77 yards exactly to tie Tobin Rote, who played in the 50s, in most passing yards in a career for the Green Bay Packers. So he got exactly 77. So Tobin Rote and Jordan Love are tied for 5th all-time in passing yards with 11,535. That's kind of odd, but that's where they stand. And it'll be 2 seasons. If Jordan Love is still with the team, it'll be 2 seasons before he catches Lynn Dickey, who played in the 70s and 80s. He's got over 21,000 yards. So he's a long way, probably 3 seasons at least, to catch him before he moves up any farther on this team. Now, Caleb Williams, in passing yards just this season, he got 250 in this game, which he was 10th in season stats of most passing yards in a single season for the Chicago Bears. But with 250 more, he jumps from 10th all the way up to 6th, passing Jay Cutler. So Caleb Williams now has 3,400 yards this season, moving him into 6th. He has a good chance with 2 games to go to actually break the record set by Eric Kramer in 1995 of 3,838 yards. I mean, I know they were hoping Caleb Williams would have 4,000, but he'd need 600 for that. I don't see that happening, but he only needs 438 in the next 2 games to catch Eric Kramer. Now, obviously, this is going to depend on the last game of the season, whether, say, the Chicago Bears sit their starters. We'll have to see what happens on that game, but there is that possibility that he could set the record, even if he doesn't make it to 4,000 yards. Now, let's move on to our next game. Buffalo Bills and the Cleveland Browns. Now, this game was way closer than anybody thought. And Cleveland almost was able to tie this game and descend in overtime. But the Buffalo Bills hold on to win over the Cleveland Browns 23-20. Honestly, their defense, I just don't see how they're going to do it with this defense they've got. They're giving up 20 points to Cleveland, which is above their Cleveland's average. And Cleveland was able to move the ball fairly well, it seemed like. Of course, the Buffalo Bills moved the ball fairly well themselves, but especially in the first half and the second half, Buffalo got shut down. Honestly, they scored 3 points in the second half, and they just hung on. They were outscored 10-3 in the second half. Could not get anything going the same way they did in the first. The first drive of the game, it looked like, oh boy, the Cleveland Browns could do nothing right. James Cook had a 44-yard run. They were just doing everything they wanted. But then the second half, Cleveland shut it down on Buffalo, but not enough to win the game. Enough to make it close is all they could do. Now in this game, Josh Allen, 12 completions on 19 attempts. So obviously didn't throw the ball much. 130 yards in this game. No touchdowns, no interceptions. Sacked a couple of times. Only twice. Now, one of those sacks, they gave Myles Garrett credit for a half a sack. And I guess so. I watched it. I'm not sure. It seemed almost like a gift to me. But got credit for half a sack, which we'll talk about in a minute. James Cook, 16 carries, 117 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Now, what's funny about that sounds really good, and it is good. But almost 100 of those yards came in the first half. Second half, he could get nothing going, really. It was a rough game for him in the second half. Josh Allen ran the ball 7 times in this game, only 17 yards. So they really held him in check, despite the fact that he did run it 7 times. Now, James Cook had 1 catch for 17 yards, so that gives him a total of 134 yards from scrimmage. So he's one of those players in the top 5 or 6 as far as yards from scrimmage go. Leading receiver in this game was Khalil Shakir, only 4 catches for 34 yards. So really, nobody had many yards. Like I said, there's only 130 yards of receiving in the game total. Now for Cleveland, Shadir Sanders, 20 completions on 29 attempts, which is, a decent completion percentage, but for 157 yards, 1 touchdown, but did throw 2 interceptions. He was out of the game for a minute with a finger that had looked like the skin was almost tore off his pinky, and they fixed that. He was back in. But they put Dylan Gabriel in for 1 down near the goal line, and I don't know if that was a bad timing for Gabriel to come in. He backed up for a pass, couldn't find anybody, tried to run, he got tackled. They had to settle for a field goal. And you wonder, honestly, if Sanders had been in there, would he have done a better job and found somebody open for a touchdown? That would have changed this game's complexion quite a bit. Sanders led the team with 4 carries for 49 yards. Raheem Sanders, 11 carries for 42 yards. Now, Quinshon Judkins, 8 carries, 22 yards, but man, broke his leg, got seriously injured. They wouldn't even, the announcers said, we're not going to show you what happened. It was pretty bad. He's out, obviously, and he'll be recovering now all the way up until next year. Bad break for him. He was really hoping, as they said on the show, on the game, the announcer, he was hoping for 1,000 yards. He needed a couple hundred. So that was whether he made that or not, but there's no way, only 22 yards in this game. Now, receiving wise, Quinshon Judkins had the most catches, 5 for 29 yards. So they were trying to get him the ball one way or the other. He ended up with a total of 51 yards, but left the game. Travion Williams had 4 receptions for 38 yards, and Harold Fannin, 4 catches, 34 yards, but he did have a touchdown. So, man, he's impressive. He just shoved people out of his way. I really do like him. And next year, whether it's Sanders is okay. To me, he's a right-handed version of, in some ways, to Tua Tagovailoa. And the type of passes he throws, he's a better runner, I guess, a little bit, but he throws these floater type passes. It's not he doesn't drill them in there like some quarterbacks when you need them to. A lot of quarterbacks can do it. I mean, for example, Trevor Lawrence had to throw a quick pass to the sideline. He drills it to the guy over there, where Sanders is more of a floater. It takes a little, it takes that extra second, half second, whatever. And which I think, then leaves the receiver with less opportunity to make a move. All right, let's look at James Cook in rushing yards on a season level for the Buffalo Bills. Went into the game in 6th place, and he had 117 yards rushing. So now James Cook now has 1,432 yards rushing for the Buffalo Bills, which is good enough to be in 6th place all time in rushing yards for the Buffalo Bills. Now, in rushing touchdowns, he had 2 of those as well. He was 15th in that category. But with 2 more, he moves into a tie with several players. Now there's 5 of them, including himself, tied for 8th with 12 touchdowns rushing, including among those Josh Allen. So Josh Allen now and James Cook, both top 10 this season in rushing touchdowns with 12. Obviously, one of them, the record for them is 16. I don't think either one will get that high. Last year, James Cook had 16, while Josh Allen had 12 last year. So they totaled 28 last year. They have 24 so far this year. So I do not think, though I guess it's as possible that they get a total of 28 rushing touchdowns again, one between the 2 of them. All right. Now, on a career level with those 2 touchdowns, he was tied with Fred Jackson, who played from 2007 to 2014. They both had 30, but with 2 more, James Cook now jumps up to 4th place all time, leaping over Fred Jackson and Cookie Gilchrist, who played in the 60s. James Cook now has 32 rushing touchdowns to put him in 4th all time in rushing touchdowns for the Buffalo Bills. Now, Josh Allen's first, obviously, was 75, which he set this year, passing Thurman Thomas, who had 65. Passed him early on in the year, and he just keeps extending his lead. Also making it hard on James Cook to ever catch him, because he's rushing for as many touchdowns as James Cook is. So I don't know that Cook will ever catch him. All right, let's move on to interceptions. Jordan Poyer, boy, this is another mistake that Cleveland made. And I didn't agree with the announcer. Now, it was a little behind the receiver, the pass that Sanders threw, but it wasn't uncatchable. It's not like I said, he doesn't throw bullets, but it was a little bit behind the guy where it hit him in the shoulder. So it's not like he had to reach way behind him, but he didn't even have his hands on the ball. Didn't even get his hands on the ball. It hit his shoulder pad, bounced up in the air. Poyer's just standing there. He's not even near the receiver, really, like 5 yards away. Just standing there, watch the ball pops up, he catches it, gets the interception. So with that interception, helped Jordan Poyer move from 10th to a tie for 7th with most interceptions in Buffalo history, now with 23 interceptions. There's 4 players now with 23 interceptions for the Buffalo Bills, and he's one of those players. So good for him, and Johnny on the spot type of a play, but that was another mistake that the Cleveland, I blame it on the Cleveland receiver. He's a professional. He should have caught that ball. All right, now for Cleveland. The only thing to talk about is Myles Garrett, who did get that half sack. Now, I still, like I talk about, and I don't mean to beat a dead horse, but the unofficial sacks, which started since 1960, on that list, Myles Garrett came into the game and tied for ninth. With this sack, which pushes him up now to 22 sacks this season, that puts him good enough to move into a tie with fourth with several other players, quite a few actually, 5 other players. So there's 6 of them now that have 22 sacks. Al Baker, who in 1978, just 4 years before they quote unquote started the official sack list, has 23 sacks, which is a half sack more than Michael Strahan and TJ Watt. So Myles Garrett now, unofficially, is 1 sack behind Al Baker, 1.5 he needs to break the record all time. Now, when we're looking at the official record, with that half sack, he moves into third, tie for third, with some of the same players from the previous list, including Jared Allen, Mark Gastineau, and Justin Houston. Those are the other 3. So he now has 22. He's only half a sack behind Strahan and Watt because they're not counting the other player from the unofficial list. So he needs a half sack to tie those 2 players, 1 sack to break the record. I'm really hoping that he gets at least a sack and a half to set the record, whether it's unofficial or official, and just puts it out there that now this is the record, regardless of how you want to phrase it. But Myles Garrett only had a half a sack. Like I said, almost to me, almost a token, but hey, he's a great player. He deserves it. He was hustling. I know that. Okay, let's move on to our next game. And that is game with the Cowboys. Cowboys, they dropped out last year, and I guess that was that. But the Los Angeles Chargers, this is another reason why the Jaguars have to keep winning, because everybody behind them, the Houston Texans, the Los Angeles Chargers, Buffalo Bills, they keep winning. So the Jaguars have to keep winning. But the Chargers won this game 34-17, won it fairly handily. Dallas shut Dallas down in the second half. Dallas didn't score at all in the second half. Dallas drops to 6-8-1. It was a long shot anyway. They had to win all their games. Eagles had to lose, which they didn't do either. So Cowboys are completely out of it. Chargers now are, in fact, the AFC is almost pretty well defined as who's going to be in the playoffs. It's a matter of order right now. There's still a chance that the Chargers could actually win their division, but we'll see. Now, in this game, Justin Herbert had a really good game, and he needed this game. 23 completions on 29 attempts for 300 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions, and almost equally important, no sacks. He had been getting sacked constantly, and he was tied for the lead in sacks going into this game in the entire NFL. 0 sacks, so really good game there for him. He also ran the ball for 8 times for 42 yards and a touchdown. One of those was 34 yards, and man, he took off. And, you're commenting, if you know his situation, he's got the broken hand, his left hand, not his passing hand, but his other hand. So just the fact that, when he's running, he's always got to be thinking about his hand and keeping it from being hit any worse than it already is. Now, in this game, also after Herbert, who had a really good game, Omarion Hampton, 16 carries, 85 yards, 1 touchdown, and really dominated now. Kamani Vidal only had 5 carries for 11 yards in this game, even shared with Hassan Haskins. So it's Hampton, now that he's back, he's dominating carries for this team. Now we're in the receiving department. Quentin Johnston, 4 catches, 104 yards for 1 touchdown. That touchdown, if you get a chance to see it, the defenders basically kind of on him, got his arm, holding his right arm. He reaches out with his left in the end zone, catches it one-handed and stays in bounds, gets 2 feet down, for the touchdown. It was really a tremendous catch. He had a couple of really good catches in this game, but he had 4 for 104 yards. Trey Harris had 4 for 54. Keenan Allen, 5 catches for 44 yards. And then Ladd McConkey, 4 catches, 43 yards, and 1 touchdown. So he spread the ball around quite a bit, actually. No one had more than 5 catches, but Quentin Johnston had the big catch. Now for the Cowboys, Dak Prescott, 21 completions on 30 attempts for 244 yards and 2 touchdowns. But like I said, that was all in the first half. The Cowboys could get nothing going in the second half. Rushing department, they didn't do well. They tried 23 carries total. Javonte Williams, 9 carries, 34 yards. So not even, 4 yards a carry. Malik Davis, 8 carries for 23 yards, just under 4 there. And then Dak Prescott had 2 for 14. 23 carries, 91 yards for the team, no touchdowns. Now, Pickens was back in the receiving department for this team, and he had a spectacular catch too. But Pickens, 7 catches on 9 targets, 130 yards, and a touchdown. So he was most receptions, most targets. CeeDee Lamb had 6 catches on 51 yards, no touchdowns, 7 targets. So actually Pickens was targeted more. So despite the game he had last week where he looked somewhat lackadaisical, in this game, he really played quite well. That's probably the issue teams have, like the Steelers had with him, is you just don't know what you're getting. Somehow you have to keep him motivated. It's kind of a strange thing. Now, Ryan Flournoy, 2 catches, 18 yards, but he did have a touchdown, only 2 targets. Last week, he was targeted second most in that game, but not this time. All right, that's a look at some of the players. Now, Dak Prescott was in 9th place passing yards in a single season for the Cowboys. Well, as I said, he got 244 yards, which moves him all the way just behind Tony Romo for 7th. So he's in 8th place, but he only needs another 9 yards to catch Tony Romo, and he'll pass him, easily pass 2 spots that Tony Romo now holds. But Dak Prescott now in 8th place with 4,175 yards, another 4,000-yard season. Not that many quarterbacks even this season altogether that have passed the 4,000-yard mark. We'll look at those season leaders later on in the week. But Dak Prescott's having a good season as far as stats go. Unfortunately, their record doesn't help them out at all. Now, also in this game, Dak Prescott, like I said, had 2 passing touchdowns. Now, on the season, he was in 12th spot, but with the 2 touchdowns, he moves into a tie with Tony Romo and Danny White for 9th all-time in passing touchdowns for the Dallas Cowboys with 28 in a single season. So he got 28 apiece. Next up is Danny White with 29. So pretty highly likely that he'll be able to pass him. The record Dak Prescott holds of 37. He won't catch that. Also, receiving yards. Big game for George Pickens. Now, this is in a single season, so George Pickens was in 14th spot all-time for the Dallas Cowboys in receiving yards in a single season with 1,212, but he had 130 more, which was able to push him actually all the way up into 8th place with 1,342 receiving yards this season. And again, he's got a good chance to move a lot farther up this list, passing even CeeDee Lamb on some categories. Though CeeDee Lamb does hold the all-time record in receiving yards for the Cowboys with over 1,700, which he did a couple of years ago. Let's get one more game in here, and then we'll call it a wrap, and that's the Kansas City Chiefs. Just their season has just tumbled and disintegrated badly. They tried so hard to be relevant this season, but could never. They started off bad, got themselves back up to 500, looked like they were on their way, but have now fallen back down. They're now 6-9 after losing to, of all teams, the Tennessee Titans, 26-9. Just not much of a game for the Kansas City Chiefs. Now, obviously, Quarterback situation for them is horrendous. No Mahomes. Gardner Minshew was in there briefly. 3 completions on 8 attempts for 15 yards. That's pathetic. Chris Oladokun came in and wrapped up the game with 11 completions on 16 attempts for 111 yards. Not too bad. Sacked 4 times, though. I think Gardner Minshew's career is kind of reaching its end as a backup guy. He wanted to be a starter, but he's just not quite that caliber. And now, even as a backup, it's getting quite questionable. In the rushing game, nothing much for the Chiefs. Of course, the whole game was this way. Isaiah Pacheco, 8 carries for 34 yards. Kareem Hunt, 3 carries for 2 yards. Total for the team, 15 carries for 51 yards, just over 3 yards a carry. Bad. I mean, as a total here now, the team had 133 yards of offense. This is just not the Kansas City Chiefs. And their offense was pretty decent, but just not the same team at all. Receiving, wow. Isaiah Pacheco led the team when receiving receptions with 6. 6 receptions, 41 yards, though. So less than 7 yards of reception. Worthy had 2 catches for 41 yards. Hollywood Brown, 3 for 22. Travis Kelce, 1 catch for 6 yards. Targeted 4 times, though. Just really bad all the way around. Now for Tennessee, Cam Ward, pretty good game, honestly. 21 completions on 28 attempts. That's a good percentage. 128 yards, 2 touchdowns, sacked twice. Tony Pollard, another 100-yard game. He's really coming on late in the season. And obviously they're not going to the playoffs, but still he's looked good. 21 carries for 102 yards, so just under 5 yards a carry there. And TJ Spears came in with 13 carries for 52 yards, so 4 yards a carry. And he also had a touchdown for TJ Spears. So they ran the ball 40 times for 164 yards, so that's 4 yards a carry and a touchdown. So they really controlled the tempo in this game. In the receiving department, Chig Okonkwo had 6 catches for 44 yards, 1 touchdown. He had the most receptions, targeted the most as well in this game for them. No one had more than 58 yards. That was Elik Ayamanar with 58 yards. So really kind of spread the ball around pretty well for the Tennessee Titans. All right, looking at some of the numbers here. All we have for the Kansas City Chiefs is Chris Jones on defense. Had 1 tackle for loss, which is good enough to move him into a tie with Justin Houston with 96 tackles for loss in his career. It only needs 4 more to hit that magic 100 number in tackles for loss. And in fact, the all-time leader for the Kansas City Chiefs is Tamba Hall with 105. So he needs 9 more. If he comes back next year, he definitely has a chance to break that record. I mean, he's been with the team since 2016, so he's had a career, but a lot of these players play a lot longer than that, so we'll see. They play 12 to 15 years, and if he sticks it out another year, he definitely has a chance to set the record for most tackles for loss for the Kansas City Chiefs. And then for Tennessee Titans, we had nobody in the top 10s. They haven't really had anybody to talk about. A lot of newer players, and nobody's doing anything season-wise, so nothing to talk about there. All right, that's the games we'll look at today. Call it a wrap, and we'll pick up tomorrow with some more games from the NFL, some really good games too. Hate to end on a game like that. Poor Tennessee Titans versus Kansas City Chiefs, 2 teams not even in the playoffs. But we'll get some more games in, and we'll have a good time seeing what we've got. I mean, man, there were some good games, and we'll get to them. Tomorrow we'll talk about, among games that were worthwhile, that Tampa Bay Carolina game. That was such a big game, important game there. And then the Jacksonville Denver game. We'll get to those 2 games for sure. All right. Appreciate you listening. If you go to Just the Stats NFL on YouTube, you can catch this game or this podcast and see the stats that correspond to the games that I talked about. And appreciate you doing that. Appreciate the subscribers, the comments. Had a nice chat with one of the listeners and about my top 10 list. Appreciate his comments. And feel free to comment on Facebook, or not Facebook so much, actually at Just the Stats NFL on YouTube or whatever podcast you might listen to. But YouTube has a nice way you can comment, like, subscribe. Appreciate all that. All right. So for this episode of Just the Stats NFL Top 10s for Monday, I'll talk to you tomorrow. I'm out.